A tragedy happened in Deborah's life. She herself was to blame for it, and she understood that she would be paying for what she had done for the rest of her life. At 15, a simple young man named Sergio fell in love with her. He came from a modest family and he was not particularly ambitious. She enjoyed his attention and gladly accepted flowers, gifts, and other signs of affection from him. Sergio often took the young woman to the river on his bike. She loved to swim and sunbathe. He did everything in his power to make her happy. Deborah liked Sergio's courtship and believed she could use him to get whatever she wanted. As for Sergio, he was so madly in love that he was just happy to be able to spend time with her. Time passed, Sergio went to college, and Deborah attended university at a nearby bigger city. He visited her every Saturday. The pair would hang out until late in the evening. After walking Deborah home, Sergio would often hitchhike to get back to their village. This went on for 2 years. All the while, Deborah hid from Sergio that she was actually in love with another young man, the rich and arrogant Carlos, whom so many girls at the university had a crush on. He told Deborah, "Honey, how can you be such a prude? What century do you live in?" She got embarrassed and blushed. But perhaps it was precisely Carlos's macho attitude that Deborah found attractive. Suddenly, he gave Deborah so much attention. She hesitated, but eventually gave in and they began dating, which filled her soul with happiness. Sergio did not know about any of it. He continued to visit Deborah every Saturday, brought her small gifts, and naively believed that he would one day marry her. One day, Carlos invited Deborah to his birthday party. "It'll be just my closest friends," he said. "We will celebrate in a country house in nature by a river. I'll pick you up." Deborah had fun with Carlos, who was very proud of the fact that he got together with Deborah, who was so hard to get. In the early morning when she returned home, Deborah found a bouquet of her favorite daisies and a basket of fragrant strawberries on the bench next to her house. It was a gift from Sergio, who had waited for her in vain. Deborah suddenly got overwhelmed by sadness. She completely forgot the day before was Saturday. While she was having fun with Carlos, Sergio was sitting on the bench all alone waiting for her. Deborah burst into tears because she was so disappointed in herself. Still, she continued her relationship with Carlos and soon realized that she was pregnant. "Carlos, what are we going to do?" she asked the puzzled young man. "I don't know," he said, clutching his head. "We'll have to get married. My father holds too high a position in this community for me to ruin his reputation. Therefore, we have to have the baby. Tell me, what's the deal with the pathetic guy you see on Saturdays?" "Don't forget to invite him to our wedding," Carlos said smugly. "Don't say that. Sergio is my friend. We grew up together," Deborah answered. She was afraid to tell Sergio about all that had happened, but in any case, Sergio stopped visiting and calling. Deborah thought that Sergio was angry at her or perhaps was dating someone new. This thought made her feel better. The following week, while Deborah stood outside her house waiting for Carlos, Sergio approached her and said, "Hello," quietly. "Sergio?" Deborah asked as she turned around. "I wasn't expecting you." "I know that. You've changed, Deborah. You became different, like a stranger." Deborah looked into Sergio's sad eyes and took his hand. She began to say, "Sergio, I need to tell you." "Ooh," Carlos's voice could be heard as he appeared out of nowhere. "What's going on here?" "Oh, it's you, Sergio, the one who is just a friend. Well then, come to our wedding tomorrow. It'll be held at the Diamond Restaurant. Everyone is welcome, but you have to wear something formal." "Let's go, darling. We're in a rush. By the way, Deborah is pregnant. Did you know? Congratulations are in order. I'll soon be a father. Isn't that wonderful? So are you coming?" "I'll be there," Sergio answered, turning pale. He did not look at Deborah. It was as if he was ashamed. Deborah blushed because of her fiancé's rude and unceremonious behavior. Deborah became Carlos's wife the following day. The wedding was in full swing when the bride saw a sad, hunched-over figure among the guests. "It's Sergio. He did come. But for what?" she thought as she looked at the young man. She got embarrassed when their eyes met. Sergio headed toward the band. He exchanged a few words with them and then took the mic. He greeted everyone, congratulated the newlyweds, and began to sing. The beautiful, deep voice of the simple young man struck everyone. The room fell silent as Sergio sang a well-known romantic song from an old movie. Deborah looked at Sergio intently. She had no idea he was such a good singer, but that's not what she was thinking about at the moment. Only then did she realize that she had just lost the greatest love of her life. No one would ever love her the way Sergio did. 3 months have passed. Deborah was having a very difficult pregnancy and her husband did nothing to help her. On the contrary, almost immediately after the wedding, he returned to his old life. He was out at all hours of the night and paid hardly any attention to his young wife. Whenever Deborah brought up any of their issues, he only had one answer: "I don't owe you anything. I married you and saved you from great shame. What else do you want from me? Give birth, babysit, don't interfere with my life. I provide for you and that should be more than enough. And in general, what did you expect when you slept with me? If you hadn't gotten pregnant, I would have left you because you're actually not a great lover." Deborah was angry at herself for her stupidity and gullibility. Not long after their wedding, she caught her husband with another woman in their bed. Deborah screamed and immediately felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She slowly sank to the floor and could not see the frightened Carlos and his lover rushing around the room. Deborah spent a whole week in the hospital. She lay facing the wall and did not want to see anyone. Carlos visited her only once and brought divorce papers for her to sign. Deborah returned to her village to spend some time at home and recover from everything she had gone through. She really wanted to see Sergio, ask for his forgiveness, and tell him that she had already been punished for all her mistakes. She opened the gate and entered the familiar house. "Sergio?" she called, but no one answered. "Sergio, are you home?" she repeated. However, it was Luisa, Sergio's mother, who came to greet her. "Why did you come?" she asked, looking at Deborah with eyes that could not see. Get out of here. You are to blame for everything that happened. Only you. Go away." "Out! I don't have a son anymore. He got hit by a car. He said that he'll go to your wedding to say goodbye to you. I tried to persuade him, tell him not to go, but I could not keep him." Deborah's legs buckled and she fainted. 10 years have passed. The young woman resumed her studies at university, graduated, and moved to another city where she got a job. She became a teacher and was happy to work with other people's children since she neither had children nor a family of her own. The always serious Deborah brightened up only in the presence of her students, but did not let any adults into her life. Many tried to be friends with her and men invited her on dates. Still, she did not want to be with anyone and refused all of their offers. Deborah's colleagues nicknamed her Nun and left her alone. One day, a boy named David joined Deborah's class. Right away, the other children didn't like him because he was clearly poor. Thin and short, he became almost invisible among the other children. The young teacher became kind of a guardian to him. She felt sorry for the kind boy and did everything in her power to make him feel comfortable at school. From David's personal file, Deborah learned that he did not have a mother and was being raised by a single father. The boy always wore clean but old-fashioned clothes, clearly hand-me-downs. He did not have much pocket money, usually some very small change. Deborah wanted to see David's father and maybe offer him some assistance, but he never came to parent-teacher conferences. When asked why his dad didn't come, the boy would shrug his shoulders and say, "He is sick." At that point, Deborah decided to go to their house and find out what was the matter. On Friday, when school finished, she took David by the hand and walked home with him. "Dad, are you home?" "I'm here." "Yes, son, I'm in the kitchen." Something creaked and a man in a wheelchair appeared in the doorway. Deborah looked at him. She wanted to say hello, but instead rushed forward, fell at his feet, clasped them, sobbing, put her head in his knees. It was her Sergio, alive. You're alive. My dear beloved Sergio is alive," Deborah said, clearly in shock. David, who did not understand what was going on, looked at his dad. Sergio, in turn, kissed the top of Deborah's head. They then sat in the kitchen for a long time. Sergio explained that he really did get hit by a car and he was in the hospital for a long time. He was in a coma for several months. The man who hit him was rich and had paid for his treatment. Sergio's life was saved, but he could not fully recover. "And David, were you married?" Deborah asked. "How can I put it? Almost. One nurse found out that I was undergoing expensive treatment and decided that I was very rich. When I more or less recovered, she began a very active courtship and got pregnant. When she found out I was poor, she rushed to get an abortion, but it was too late. I was discharged when my son was 6 months old. When he turned 3, she left us. I have absolutely no idea where she is now. We sold our apartment and moved here. It's not expensive and there is a good hospital nearby. Sergio, if you let me, I will try to fix everything. It is such a blessing that you are alive," Deborah cried. Afterwards, no one could recognize her. She no longer walked but floated on air. She was no longer sad, but on the contrary, couldn't stop laughing. She went to the capital many times to arrange for Sergio's treatment and opened a bank account in his name. She was not ashamed to share their story. 3 years later, she walked proudly next to her husband, who had a slight limp, and their son David, who was pushing a stroller with his little sister.